Super Bowl 56 is here this Sunday. We're joined by Pro Football Network's very own Trey Wingo to break down the big game here. This is our Super Bowl preview. Trey, we had a chance to speak yesterday, but this is it. This is our kickoff for the Super Bowl preview.
Let's get it done. I'm ready to roll. It's at this point we're all just ready for the game to start. You know, that's sort of where we are in the week.
Well, you just imagine the athletes as well, all of the media sessions they have to do. They're probably saying, I just want to focus on the game. We actually spoke with a high-performance psychologist about moments like this for players and the traps that they can fall. And they say all the media, all the bright lights, players get tired of that a little bit at the end. They just want to go home, practice, go back home, eat, and just wait for Sunday to get here.
Yeah. Players are such creatures of habit, right? And the thing that's really weird about the Super Bowl is it's completely out of the normal routine. Like, people will tell you, whether it's Mark Schlereth, who's played in 3 of these, or Brewski, who's played in 5, that you have to find a way to regulate yourself, especially on game day. Because normally, you know, if it's a 1 o'clock game or a 4 o'clock game, you get to the stadium by a certain time. But, you know, this game kicks off at 6:30, and, you know, you're just, at some point, you're trying to find a way to keep yourself busy in your hotel room. And, like, Mark used to tell me that just to pass the time, he would rearrange the furniture in his hotel room to practice his blocking techniques, just to do something. Like, really, it's okay now, but once Friday night rolls around, all the players, they just want the game to be here, and you've got to find a way to stay focused, stay sharp, and not drive yourself crazy more than anything else.
That's what I do. On Sundays, you know, I'm not playing in the game, Trey, but on Sunday, I get back home to Colorado. I'm going to be like, what am I going to do with my hands? What am I going to do for the next 7 or 8 hours? We have the halftime show, which is going to be really fun. Yeah. What a spectacular event here in LA. You know, let's talk about both of these teams here.
Yeah.
Cincinnati Bengals. Just a year ago, the last place team inside that AFC North division, a lot of questions, a very young team. Joe Burrow goes down, and everybody's wondering, you know, what's he going to look like coming off of ACL? You know, what are they going to have to do to surround him, to protect him? Now, first in the AFC North, he's willed their way through a gauntlet, so to speak. Yeah. Kansas City twice. I mean, just overcoming a Tennessee front seven. Now, the toughest test of the season, the Los Angeles Rams.
Listen, if they pull this thing off, it's the greatest 2-year turnaround in NFL history. I mean, it just is. They had the number 1 pick of the 2020 draft, and then they're in the Super Bowl after the 2021 season. That's remarkable. The Bengals are a hard team to figure out because by any empirical standard, they should not be here. And let's just forget the idea of the Chiefs blowing an 18-point lead at home. We've covered that a million times. But that's one of the reasons why they shouldn't be here. The Bengals have 2 fatal flaws as a football team. Joe Burrow was sacked 51 times in the regular season. He is the most sacked quarterback this entire season. Before this year, no most sacked quarterback has ever made it to the Super Bowl. He's the first most sacked quarterback to be here. The Bengals during the playoffs are giving up 6 yards roughly per rush in the postseason. You can't win by giving up 5.9 yards per carry in a playoff game, yet they've won 3 of them. So there's two things here. You have to acknowledge those flaws, but you have to also figure out how are they able to overcome those flaws. And the biggest reason is Joe Burrow. Now, one of the great things about doing the draft all these years is that you got to get these great research packets from the research department. I want to read you guys something that was from the Joe Burrow 2020 research packet. And it stuck out to me as I watched him go through the postseason, and even the Week 17 game against the Chiefs. And I think it defines who he is as a player better than any stat could. It's from the great Jim Carr. Burrow played on a travel AAU basketball team when he was 9. During a state tournament game, they were down by 8 points with 30 seconds to play. The coach said, "We kind of thought it was over." But then Burrow took over, scoring 9 consecutive points, including 7 straight foul shots. The coach said, "I'd never seen anything like it. It was then I knew he was different from everyone else. I couldn't believe the poise under pressure and competitive drive demonstrated by a 9-year-old." Now here's where it gets really weird. After the game, the coach was a guy named Tom Vanderven, who was a sociology professor at Ohio University. I went up to Joe's parents and told them that Joe had the kind of qualities you find in cops and first responders, as well as serial offenders. He had the kind of qualities those people have, where his pulse probably doesn't change no matter the situation he finds himself in. I don't know of anything that sums up what we've seen from Joe better than that description of a guy who saw it in him when he was 9 years old. Like it's sort of like when Tiger Woods was doing all those things on the golf course at a very young age. And I'm not suggesting that Joe is going to be the greatest quarterback of all time. I'm not saying he's the next Montana. I'm not saying he's the next Brady. He has a disassociative quality where the circumstances don't bother him. And that's the best thing you could have. I mean, you get sacked 9 times against the Titans. No big deal. I'll make the throw I need. They were down 14-0, 21-7, 28-17 against the Chiefs in Week 17. I'll hang in there and do what is necessary. They're down 21-3 in the AFC Championship game. No problem. Just give me a chance. Joe Burrow will steal games for you if you give him the opportunity. And it's good that he's using his powers for evil, or good rather than evil. He could be the next Dexter. You know what I mean? He could be the greatest serial killer of all time. He's chosen to be the good side of things with that quality.
Well, he's a cerebral killer on the football field, too. You mentioned all the times that he's been hit. Usually, you would imagine a quarterback would flinch or be skittish in the pocket.
No.
He doesn't have that. He's got this calm composure. I watched a video from him in high school. He lost in a high school state championship football game one time. And he said, I don't like this feeling. I don't ever want to feel this feeling ever again. Next year they go out and they win it.
Yeah.
He goes to LSU, the journey of going through the ups and downs, fighting, trying to find a home for him.
Yeah.
National championship win there. Now, Super Bowl 56. This is what it's all about here. Now, while we talk about Joe Burrow, for Zach Taylor, he's got to be very grateful that Joe Burrow came along as well. But they've also been able to build a really solidified roster around him with Joe Mixon. Samaje Perine as the backup to him, but really going out and getting a guy that he's so comfortable with in Jamar Chase.
Yeah, and I've texted Zach a few times because everyone was like, you got to protect Burrow. You got to take Penei Sewell. And like 4 times during the season, I'm like, Zach, you were right. He's like, I forgive you. It's all good. They still do have to protect him because that line is not sustainable, but you don't pass on a transitional player like Jamar Chase. I mean, he's a transcendent player, and he's proven that to be the right call. By the way, Chase is interesting because he set rookie records for receiving and the most receiving yards in the postseason. The next up is the rookie record for most receiving yards in a Super Bowl, held by Torrey Holt. When the Rams won Super Bowl 34, he had 109 receiving yards in that win over the Titans in Atlanta. That's the next check mark for Jamar Chase. Can he take down Torrey Holt's rookie record of 109 receiving yards in the Super Bowl? He might, but there's matchups within the matchup that always dictate games, right?
Yeah.
One of them is going to be how they defend Jamar Chase. And I have this number. I got to call it up for you here. What will the Rams do with Jalen Ramsey? Because Jalen can lock down people better than anybody I know. The Bengals have won 7 of 8 games this season when Jamar Chase has at least 90 receiving yards. Jalen Ramsey, if he shadows him, Ramsey has allowed only about 60 receiving yards in primary coverage of a single wide receiver. So that's a matchup to watch during the game. How much will they single up Ramsey on Jamar Chase, and will Jamar Chase be able to break free? If that's something the Rams decide to do, I think that bodes very favorably for the Rams in that situation.
Well, even going back to that point as well, that's where guys like Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, they're going to have to step up. We don't know just yet the status of C.J. Uzomah, whether or not he will play. I know that there was a lot of doubt, there was a lot of concern about whether or not that was going to happen. How do you see them maybe, the Rams defense, I feel like, will allocate a lot towards Jamar's side. Yeah. Those guys have to step up here.
Well, listen, if you look at Tyler Boyd's sort of targets on the year, it's getting him matched up on linebackers one-on-one. And that is a problem for Reeder and some of the Rams linebackers. So usually in a Super Bowl, Bill Belichick was the best at this, the best player is not going to beat us. We're going to take him out of the game. There's a famous clip in Super Bowl 46 where he's mic'd up and he said, we're going to double Nix and we're going to double Cruz, Hakeem Nicks and Victor Cruz. Let's make Manningham beat us. And if you look at the play that allowed the Giants to score the game-winning touchdown, it was a rail shot down the sidelines, and Mario Manningham had this weird habit of running himself out of bounds on that exact route. I think he did it 4 times that regular season. They doubled him. Manning made the perfect throw, and Manningham stayed in bounds and made the catch. So Bill's whole plan was, if we lose, we'll lose to that guy. We're not going to lose to Cruz or Nix. I know that the Rams were thinking, if we're going to lose, Chase isn't going to be the guy. It might be Boyd and it might be Higgins, but we're not going to go down with their best player burning us. And that's why Boyd and Higgins are going to be critical in this game.
Well, let's flip it to the other side now. The Los Angeles Rams, for Sean McVay, this is a moment of redemption. Just several years ago, made it to the Super Bowl against Bill Belichick, against the New England Patriots. And what we saw from them was this accumulation of the highest scoring offense in the league that year, only accounting for 3 points. That's something that we know that Sean McVay wants to get out of his system.
Yeah.
The Bengals defense presents an interesting test. How do you see this maybe going here?
I just, like, Sean's a really creative play caller, and so is Andy Reid. Don't get cute. Like, don't get cute. Like, Norv Turner had a great line when he was the offensive coordinator of the Cowboys in the 90s. He said, we're going to give them a heavy dose of 22, which is, until you show us you can stop Emmitt Smith running behind that great offensive line, we're just going to cram it down your throat. And if you have a defense that's given up 6 yards a carry, and I know you have Cooper Kupp, and I know you have Matthew Stafford with 41 touchdowns, but if their defense is that bad against the run, I want to see Cam Akers, Sony Michel, and everybody in that running game go wild for the LA Rams. You never go broke taking a profit. If they're giving you that opportunity, take it. And then when they have to come up to stop that, then hit them with Cooper Kupp, then hit them with Odell Beckham Jr., then hit them with Tyler Higbee. I don't want the Rams to overthink it. And sometimes you can be your own worst enemy, like we saw the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game. Don't be your own worst enemy. Make them stop what you know works. And if they can't, shove it down their throats the entire game.
This Rams team often at times has been deemed as a star power built team for 2021, where everyone's like, hey, this is it. This is the window they have to take advantage of. They go out there and they get OBJ after Robert Woods goes down. We had Robert Woods here on the show yesterday, a lot of great insight from him. Then they go and they get Von Miller to add some defensive firepower opposite Aaron Donald, Leonard Floyd, Sean Robinson there on the interior. When you look at the defensive lineup matchup here against the Bengals offensive line, what must the Bengals do to avoid these guys from absolutely wrecking the game plan that they have?
I don't know what they can do. Like, the only thing they can do is try to counter, the best thing they can do is counter the speed of the Rams, which is quick throws, get it out there quickly, underneath routes, because Aaron Donald is going to tear that line apart. He's going to. That's going to happen. The question is, can you neutralize him doing that by getting that ball out there 2-3 steps? And just hope he shoots a wrong gap every once in a while on a run game, because that is a mismatch of gigantic proportions. The Bengals offensive line against an Aaron Donald-led defensive line. There's no win for the Bengals there in terms of the skill and the matchup. You have to create things by offensive play calling that doesn't allow that to destroy your game plan.
One thing I saw in 2015 when Peyton Manning, his final season in the NFL, they're taking on the #1 defense in the NFL with the Carolina Panthers.
#1 offense.
The #1 offense and the #2 defense.
Yes,
the Broncos are the #1 defense there.
Yeah.
But going back to that matchup, everyone was talking about Thomas Davis, Luke Kuechly. I mean, you even had Jared Allen there as well. And they're like, how can the Broncos avoid the
terrible
impact
offensive
of
line, by the
those
way.
guys?
Yeah.
You know what we saw Peyton do? Quick checks, throwing slant routes, crossing patterns to Owen Daniels. This might be the one game plan where Joe Burrow, who obviously has elevated skill set to him, he can maybe capitalize on that as well. We saw them get very screen happy a little bit with Samaje Perine and mixing against the Chiefs. That's going to be a big component of this game too.
They have to do something to counteract their weakness. And the only way to do that is to maximize the opponent's strength. What's the old line, Shinzu, the art of war? Find out what your opponent does poorly and capitalize on it. You know, that's exactly what it is. That's the only way they survive this. That's the only way they survive. Because they can't go straight up against that Rams front seven. They can't.
It's going to be a tough matchup to watch that, but being able to see the excitement, how can they negate the impact will be a very critical key here. Now, Trey, I want to ask you here, we're going to go through X Factor players.
Yeah.
For you on the Los Angeles Rams side of things, if you're looking at one X Factor player who will have to step up to give their team the best chance to win, who are you rolling with here this week?
It's their second and third corners, because Jalen Ramsey is going to be more than likely making sure that Jamar Chase doesn't beat him. So I think the other cornerbacks for the Rams are going to be critical for them. Can they step up and stop Higgins and Boyd? Because if Jamar and Jalen sort of neutralize each other, then that's the matchup where the Bengals have to win.
On the flip side, we take a look at the Bengals. X factors for them. I mean, it's easy to think Joe Burrow, right? That might be the most easy one. I mean, it could be your answer, but if somebody's going to step up, maybe even on the defensive side of the ball for the Bengals, who would your X factor be for Cincinnati?
Mike Hilton. He played, that interception he had against Tennessee was incredible. And I was like, that wasn't a bad throw by Tannehill. The play was open. Hilton just made a better play. Since Odell has sort of they went through that 3-game slide when he got there, because that was a big transition when Woods went down and he did so many things. Mike Hilton's going to have a huge game. He's going to have a huge game for Cincinnati because they legitimately have 3 wide receivers that can burn you in Van Jefferson, obviously Odell, and of course Cooper Kupp, who was, had one of the greatest seasons in the history of football from the receiver position. So I think Mike Hilton is going to have a hell of a game.
It's going to be fun to watch as well for Mike Hilton, because then, Cooper Kupp, we were talking with various people this week. Chad Ochocinco was talking about Jamar Chase, the evolution, and he's even seen that for Jamar Chase in this game. He says, I feel like I see him more elevated than I ever was in Cincinnati. That's a lot of high praise.
Yeah, it is. And he's lived up to it. Kid's 21. He's 21 years old. Like, you could make a very compelling argument that the Bengals have by far the best young group of skill position players in the NFL. Burrow, Mixon, and Chase are 25 or younger. Now, it's a weird cutoff. Mahomes is 26, so I understand that. But Kelsey's older. Tyreek Hill is older. If they can shore up the offensive line, which they're going to have to do, the Bengals aren't going anywhere. Like, they're not going anywhere. Joe Burrow may not win you the game, but he's not going to lose you the game. And I think that's another one of his great qualities. So the talent level in the AFC right now is as good as we've seen it in a long time, with what we have in Kansas City, what we have in Cincinnati, what you have in Buffalo, what you have in LA here with the Chargers. There's a lot of really top-level skill position players in the AFC, and the Bengals are going to be in that mix for a long time.
They're going to have a lot of salary cap money to be able to add to the offensive line, which I think will boost them, but it's about building for the future. And what better way by getting a Super Bowl victory in a year where nobody thought that they would do it? That is intriguing in and of itself. Trey, as we transition a little bit off from the game, you've been covering Super Bowls for a long time. You've been providing amazing insight to football fans all around the world. My bigger question to you, when you look back at all the Super Bowls that have happened, this is Super Bowl 56, which Super Bowl or Super Bowls can you say were some of your best moments or your most favorite years covering the game?
Well, there's personal reasons and there's professional reasons. So, the last Super Bowl that was here was Super Bowl 27. The Cowboys were in that one. I grew up a Cowboys fan. I took my dad to that Super Bowl. We had 50-yard line seats at the Rose Bowl, and we're sitting there in our seats, and I'm like, Dad, check it out. Jack Nicholson, the actor, walked past our seats to get to his seats. We had better seats than Jack. That was fun. And I took my dad to all 3 Super Bowls in the 90s, so that was great. Another personal one, my son was a huge Peyton Manning fan growing up in Connecticut. Not the popular quarterback in Connecticut, it would be Tom Brady. And, I took him to Super Bowl 48, which was a disaster. Awful. Yeah, that first snap over Peyton's head. But somehow they got back to Super Bowl 50, and he was there for that one. And that was a good day. That was a good day. So those are the personal ones. They'll never be anything like Super Bowl 51. 28-3, game's over. Patriot fans are just like, I can't believe this is happening. And NFL Films mic'd up the Falcons, and this, I think, was as much as their demise as anything else. They were on the sidelines thinking, bro, it's 23, and the guy like, I don't know, man, that's Tom Brady. You cannot think that way. You cannot think that way. You have to say to yourself, screw that guy. We're up 28-3. We're going to keep going. In the game, players on the sidelines were saying, it's Tom Brady, I don't know. You're up 25 points. Finish the deal. That one will always be there. And obviously, I was there for the beginning of the Patriots dynasty in Super Bowl 36. That week in New Orleans, it felt like there wasn't a championship to be fought for. It was a coronation of the Rams. They had played in Foxborough out in the cold in the regular season on a Sunday night game and won 14-7. This game was indoors, on turf, greatest show on turf, part 2. And talking about outthinking yourselves, Mike Martz, the Rams head coach, they basically begged the Patriots for the Rams to run the ball, just give it to Marshall Faulk. They were giving him that. And Mike Martz, nope, we're going to throw it. We're going to throw it. We're going to throw it. Well, they got their butts kicked because they didn't take what was in front of them. And that Super Bowl, like Tom Brady had 145 passing yards in that game. I'd say almost half of it came on that final drive. Like there was no offense in that game for New England, and very little, quite frankly, for the Rams. But much like Burrow, when he had to have it, they put together. John Madden was in the booth at the time telling them they should go to overtime. They should not try and win the game. That's how poorly Brady was playing on the offense of that side. But it all worked out, and that was the birth of the greatest dynasty that we will ever see in the history of the NFL.
And I remember that game too, going back to that regular season, the Rams, they put a smacking on the Patriots and they were talking. Yeah. And I saw it was in the Tom Brady's latest documentary on ESPN. Fantastic, really, by the way. The Man in the Arena. He talked about like, we're going to see you again. Yeah. We'll see you again. Yeah. And so the accumulation, that was the start of Tom Brady. I had a chance yesterday to ask Justin Herbert. I said, hey, you and I, we grew up watching the Peyton Mannings, the Tom Brady's, Drew Brees, Ben Roethlisberger's. Those guys are no longer in the NFL. Now you have a chance alongside guys like Joe Burrow, looking at Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, to be what we saw growing up. And he said, wow, never thought of it that way. He said, it's crazy to think about. And it's crazy to think about a world without Tom Brady as well. I mean, as we look, this is a Super Bowl where we could see the passing of the guard. Matthew Stafford, a veteran player. Joe Burrow, the young rising guy. I mean, I think this is why we watch too. We love to see greatness.
We're in a transition. We're absolutely in a transition here, and Justin is part of that great transition. He is part of the next wave of generational quarterbacks. And there's so many good young quarterbacks across the NFL right now. The league is in really good hands, and obviously the league is dictating for these guys to have longer careers with the way the game is called. But yeah, this is a massive shift. I mean, no Brady, no Roethlisberger, no Brees, neither Manning for the first time since 2001 when Brady came into the league. Yeah.
That is insanity, thinking about it. Wow, I was at that point, I was only 7 years old. Here we are, Super Bowl 56, ahead of the time here. Super Bowl 56, ladies and gentlemen, kicks off, obviously Sunday night. It's going to be a late game, fun halftime show, but we're so excited to see Joe Burrow, this Cincinnati Bengals team, take on Matthew Stafford in this Los Angeles Rams team. It's going to be a fun one. Trey Wingo breaking it down here, our very own here at Pro Football Network, to preview Sunday's big game. Trey, it's been an honor, it's been a pleasure. Have enjoyed talking with you here today. Thank you so much for joining.
Bro, we're just getting started. Looking forward to next season already, after this game is over, of course.
Already. Free agencies coming up, the NFL draft, and also the NFL Scouting Combine here in just a few weeks. We'll have you covered at ProFootballNetwork.com. In the meantime, make sure you check out Trey Wingo's More Than Football podcast, where he sits down with some of the biggest names in the sports world, sports media, and he talks about it bigger than just the game itself, but the stories of the people that he sits down with. You get that free and available everywhere you get your podcasts.